I read what seemed like a charming interview with my next guest in the New York Times. So times really have changed. I'm told that there's a time when every town in America had a house of ill repute. They rumored that they were even in my hometown in Nebraska, and I never believed it, and found out years later from people who said they were there that they were there. Things have changed these days. I guess there aren't that many, but my next guest has lived through that age, and she has a book out called Pauline's, which has been a lot of talk about. For 40 years, she ran a house on Clay Street in Bowling Green, Kentucky, and people came from miles around, and apparently was quite famous. She is retired now, but irrepressible. Will you welcome, please, Pauline Tabor. What's a nice kid like you doing on a show like this?
Well, I am just honored to be on your show. Because if this had happened 5, 10, or 20 years ago, well, I'd have been run out of New York.
Well, why were you never run out of Bowling Green? I mean, for example...
Oh, well, we have smart politicians and people that believe a house run the way I ran it was the best for the community.
I see. And how...
Keep the kids off the street. And the girls.
Can I say something? Keeps the married men out of trouble, too. They don't have affairs with their secretaries and things.
Well, that's always one of the defenses of that sort of thing.
The secretaries won't be mad at me now.
Well, they may, but
I'm secretary will.
The oldest question in this business is, how did you get started in this business? And but this is, I suppose it applies here. How does a thing like that? Was it a childhood ambition?
No, believe it or not, I was a Sunday school teacher. And, isn't that something? And what a switch, I know.
It is it.
Yes. But, see, I turned out in the heart of depression.
Yeah.
And things were rough. My husband and I separated, and I was left with 2 little boys. And I did house-to-house canvassing for, oh gosh, I hope they don't hate me for this, for Avon Cosmetics. Oh dear. And then I also sold a real silk hosiery. Uh-huh. And people just couldn't afford to buy real silk when they could go down to the dime store and buy them for 29 or 39 cents. The same applied for makeup. They bought little 10-cent bottles of powder and makeup. You know, depression was rough. That's before your time, young man.
It was just before it. Yeah.
And
I remember it. It was rough. Couldn't afford a lot of things.
I don't think anybody here remembers it, but it was rough.
Yeah. And you had just 2 kids to support.
I had 2 kids to support, and it was rough. And I guess I just took the road to least resistance. I don't know. I had been in to borrow some money from a friend of mine who had a grocery store there at home. And I asked him for $50, and I think then you had to have everybody in town go on your note to borrow $50 at the bank. And he said, I can't help you. But there was a friend of his standing there, and he asked the man who I was when I went out. Of course, I was small and young and rather nice looking then, so they tell me. You know, they wait till I got fat and 40, now it's 60, before they told me that I was nice looking then. But
what would you have done differently if they'd told you
that? Well,
I
don't know. Maybe ask for more money. Oh, dear.
But as I understand...
Believe it or not, $50 then was a lot of money.
They always said... Well, as I understood it, you were in management, weren't you? I mean, you were...
Oh, yeah. This is before management. This is what gave me the idea of getting a house. Yeah. Because I had typhoid fever and gained 100 pounds of weight in a year's time. Yeah. And, you know, most men know what they want, but damn few of them know how much. Well. So I had to get smaller girls and something like that. So then I just retired or quituated. I just quit.
But everyone in the community knew that this place existed,
and
yes. And
yes.
Was there It's so strange that you went from Sunday school teaching to
It
that.
was strange. And my family had a fit. They've had a fit because I wrote the book, but I'm not paying a bit of attention
Tell me,
to
did
them.
you come across many of your students?
Oh, yes. I guess if I could see that audience out there, I might recognize one or two in there. I mean customers now, not the girls.
No, I was talking about your students in Sunday school.
Oh, students
wonder
in
whether
Sunday
they followed
school.
you on.
Oh, yes, I could recognize some of them, too.
Did anything dramatic, like a great, beautiful love affair or something ever happen? I mean, did any of the girls go on to marry senators or congressmen or something like
Yes. Ooh, a lot of them did. So there's hopes for a lot of people. No kidding. The smart man realized that the girl that knew what the score was would make him a better wife. I've discussed it with so many people.
Well, why are there bawdy houses, as they used to say?
Well, there's not too many right now, but I wish that they were legalized. I think they would be the best for the whole country. And let the government run them. They run everything anyway, so...
I hate that. I wouldn't like to have to fill out a form in triplicate before I could get in there. You know?
How do they...
That's what would happen
Well,
if
you
the
could go
government took
under
it
there as John Doe or something. You wouldn't have to give your right name.
But
That's
what
the
are
way
they?
most of them.
What were your tax? I remember the article in the Times. No, it wasn't in there. I don't think they covered that. I remember wondering that. What is the tax setup on a thing like that?
Oh, dear, as long as Uncle Sam gets his money, he doesn't give a darn how you get it, just so he gets his part of it. I paid tax on a rooming house for years and years.
Was it considered a professional residence, the way they say on tax forms? Or
Oh,
what?
yes.
How on earth do you
Well,
handle...
you know you couldn't make that much money in a rooming house. Somebody had to foul up somewhere. So they just realized that where I got it, and they quit asking questions. They didn't put down rooming house.
But the government knew as they were...
Oh, dear, did they
Well, the
know?
income tax inspector.
What kind of income tax do you think I've paid for 40 years?
You could take off expenses, linens, whatever
Oh,
it might.
yes,
Right.
I could do that.
Just occurs.
How do you do the part? Does he have one of those forms that said what parts of the house do you use for entertainment purposes or whatever it is? Or,
No, I didn't have that
is there-
kind.
Yeah.
How many girls did you employ?
Anywhere from 2 to 8.
And how
varied.
long did their careers last?
If they was good, not just the pretty ones. You know, you sell yourself in the parlor, and then you sell yourself after you get behind locked doors. I said locked doors, I mean closed doors.
No.
We never had a lock on a door. But that...
Well, let me
That's
ask.
true.
Well, I'm sorry. How do prominent citizens handle their appearance there? I mean, did people come in disguises? Because
Well, a few
wherever
times
these-
I closed up for the really big men, and I have let them have the house for the evening and served them quail on toast for breakfast.
What on toast?
And yet, with these same...
Quail!
Oh.
Quail!
Did you?
Listen, I can talk plainer than that. I'm sorry you misunderstood.
Were you not on the? Did you appear with David Susskind
yes,
on
sir,
somewhere?
I did.
Yeah. What was he anxious to know from you?
How
Well,
much?
I don't know. A lot of things, and I tried to give him a few pointers because he told me he was a married man. Are you married? Are you?
Yeah.
Well, then you just read my book, and I can teach you a few things. You know the saying, we never get too old to learn.
I don't think you learn things out of books.
Well, I know, but mine is natural experiences.
Well, do you ever feel like you've led a life of vice and that
No,
you should
sir,
be
I
ashamed of
don't.
it? And that
I'm not a
you're-
bit ashamed of it. I'm just sorry I turned out in my hometown and embarrassed my family like I have, because they've naturally been embarrassed.
Have they disowned you?
No, they didn't disown me, but while someone was talking, I was laughing all the way to the bank.
Well, what must have been? What about your own kids? Weren't they the butt of jokes?
Yes, they had it rough a little bit.
Yeah.
But I'll have to still say this about my hometown. They was wonderful to my boys. I think perhaps the kids heard their parents say something and they smarted off. But as a whole, I don't think I could have picked a town in the whole United States that treated my sons any better than Bowling Green, Kentucky did.
Are you welcome there? Can you get into the country club?
Oh, I don't go to the country club because I don't want to get turned down. I've never tried to get in the country club.
That's sad. Let's all go
No,
there.
listen, I have my own country club. I have a
Wait,
I have a beautiful farm out
as
in
I
the
understood it,
country.
you're retired.
Oh, I'm retired,
Oh.
and I let all that class of people come to see me, and if I don't like them, if they drink up too much of my scotch or something, why then they don't get the second invitation back. If they're just coming to see what they can get out of me, you know.
At the height of, the success of your house, did you actually, participate? I mean, did
No,
you,
I didn't, darling.
You never, you just
Not from
ran
the-
it.
From the start. Maybe just the first few months or something to get started. Because,
Now listen, I'm going to show you how to do it once. And
well, you
I
know,
had
like-
tried to conduct this conversation on a high plane. Let's have a
studying
different
the rest
message
of us,
and we'll
aren't
be
you?
back. I'm talking with Pauline Tabor, who ran an establishment of ill repute, they usually say.
Yes.
Yes. During the war, you closed, and it's an interesting story, what happened there, but it was right during World War II.
Well, you see, we had a man that fought at Washington and got a law passed. They call it the May Act, named it after him. And you couldn't be within so many feet of a army camp. And I was between Fort Campbell and Fort Knox. And I heard that I was fixing to get closed. You know, you always have a friend or two. So I got everyone out of town real quick without a lot of talk and just closed up. So I went on about my business, took some nice trips and things, and I had just returned off of one of these trips when I had a phone call from the mayor of our town. Wanted me to meet uptown with some of the officials and talk over about opening up. I said, I'm closed. I kind of like loafing now. I don't know whether I want to open up again. And I said, oh, yes, we want you. I said, what, to raid me then and get a great big fine? He said, no, come on up and talk to us. So when I got there, the sheriff was there and the chief of police, as well as the mayor and some of the other fellows. One of them happens to be in Washington now. I'd better not call his name because he might could hurt me. But
Oh, go ahead.
I hope he's watching. But anyway, they explained to me why they wanted me to open up again. They said that after I closed, so many hookers came into town. They clipped the fellows, they gave them knockout drops, took every dime that they had. They couldn't control venereal disease. And they had just decided that if I would come and open up, now after the government had closed me, if I didn't let a soldier boy come in full uniform, said as long as he's got that tie off, he'll be considered out of uniform.
Is that an actual regulation? I mean, is that in print somewhere that's
Well,
once
that's
you have a
what
tie
I
off,
was
you're
told. So anyway, I opened up and they didn't bother me. And I'd make those boys either put on somebody else's coat or take the tie off and their cap off, and they was considered out of uniform then.
But you were urged to.
At what point? You know, it's like going into a restaurant in New York and they say you can't come in without a tie, and they give you a tie. At what point did you give them a coat to put on?
But did I give them what?
When did you give them the coat to put on? You know,
Oh, some of their budget, maybe a civilian brought them there to begin with.
Oh, I see.
See.
But if
You
they
know, when she said about packing up and disappearing in the night, my mind immediately went to the following night when people would come knocking on the door and the new people who had rented the house. And I was like, what do you want? And there's a great story about the drunk who goes to the wrong place, you know, and walks up 3 flights of stairs and bangs on the door, and perfectly innocent man in a T-shirt watching television comes and says, yeah, what do you want? And the guy sees the guy's wife behind him and says, she'll do. And the husband, wham! Right in the teeth. And the guy goes down 3 flights of stairs, crawls back up again, knocks on the door, and the husband comes again and says, you again? Wham! Down the stairs again, more dead than alive, crawls back up, battered and bloody, knocks on the door. The husband draws his hand back, and the drunk says, before you knock me downstairs, I just want to say one thing. You got a hell of a lot to learn about running off.
There's moral in that.
But I never had that trouble because I owned my places.
Yes.
I never rented. And I guess that I'd be running today if urban renewal hadn't taken over my place. And I just didn't want to hunt for a new location and go to all that trouble trying to get the...
How is urban renewal doing with the house?
Oh, it is flat, and 3 prominent businessmen wrecked it and sold the bricks, and the bricks went all over the country.
Souvenirs.
Yes, I was asked
But it was
to be
full
on
of
your
antiques,
show
wasn't
then
it?
about the bricks, and I told the young lady that called me that wait till my book was printed, and I'd talk about the bricks and my book. So thank you. Here I
You
am.
get 2 birds with 1 stone. But I think it's weird that you were asked to reopen as a civic gesture of improvement.
Well,
to
see, I
cut
told you
down
we
the,
had smart politicians at home.
Randy politicians.
And yet those same people would be ashamed to meet you in public and under certain circumstances.
Oh, well,
who
some
would,
of them because they had such fools for wives. No, not all wives. I'm for women. You men stick together, and the women don't. If we'd stick together more, well, we'd be lots better off. No, we talk about someone, and we rattle to you men, and we say, oh, she's this, and she's stepping out, and she's doing that, but I don't notice you men coming in and telling about somebody having an affair or something. So the women, first of all, are going to have to learn to stick together more. That goes for you all out there.
Feels just like a Sunday school class, doesn't it? Did something change in you between the time you were a Sunday school teacher? I mean, at the time you were a Sunday school teacher, could you have justified your later life at that point, or did you change
No, I thought I
psychologically?
was a
some?
disgrace. The first thing, I had trouble with my minister. Well, he hurt me very much. Instead of saying, Pauline, now you don't have to do this and you don't have to do that. We'll help you and we'll do this and we'll do that and we'll pray for you. Why, he turned his head and didn't even speak to me on the street. So I just thought I was a better Christian than he was. Still think so. Still think so.
I sincerely hope that you didn't let him in when he came knocking round at the
Well,
door.
he didn't come knocking around the door, but I've had some large, great big ministers in the country has been to my house, and one time when I found out who one was, I asked him why he was taking a chance and why he was there. He said, I'm not taking a chance. He was holding a revival in my hometown. He said, no kidding. Oh, he was there for a week. Most handsome, great big man. So he said, I'm not committing a sin because my wife is ill and we don't have sex. But he said, I would be committing a sin if I was carrying on with some of the women in the church. Said, I come down here, lay my money on the line, and it's all forgotten about.
He must have been reading the revised version of the Bible of some.
Could have been. But now let me tell you this, I'm just out of the hospital. I was in the hospital for 3 weeks with a blood clot in each leg. And when I tell you that I had 4 ministers from different denominations come in to see me, one of them came 4 times, but he was up at the hospital. None of them was asking me to come to church, but one did. And I laughingly told him if I was to walk in his church, the roof would fall in. He said, no, I'd be glad to have you. And I don't know, maybe the ministers in my hometown, some of them have some sense too.
Could be. Do they all know the part about casting the first stone? And all
Well,
that?
I don't know, 1 or 2 of them doesn't.
Interesting.
But the majority of them, I believe, do. Really, I do.
Well, you've certainly had an interesting life, and now it's time to play You Bet Your Life. We have a brief message from our local station, Stephen.